Adama stared at the man sitting on her mother's favorite hand-woven stool. He was a lanky fellow, all elbows and knees, Kofi. Her mother had, in her infinite wisdom, decided he would be her husband. A good man, she declared, eyes gleaming with matchmaking zeal. Husband at my age, the village bustled with life outside, but inside, Adama felt as though the air had thickened. He tells wonderful stories, she chirped. Stories don't put food on the table. Kofi seemed to shrink under her gaze. Good, let him shrink. Adama, a woman who single-handedly ran her fabric shop, was nobody's fool. She knew her mother meant well, but marriage to Kofi? He looked as though a strong wind would knock him over. Adama sighed, the weight of her mother's expectations heavy on her shoulders. So, your mother tells me you have a fabric shop. Silence descended upon them, thick and heavy as the humid air. Kofi shifted uncomfortably, reminding Adama of a startled bushfowl. S1. Yes, I have a farm. Goats. Kofi, bless his heart, seemed oblivious to her lack of enthusiasm. He launched into a detailed description of his goats. Adama tuned him out, her mind racing. Just as she was about to stage a dramatic collapse, her mother bustled back in, a wide smile plastered on her face. S1, how pastoral. See, getting along famously. Kofi, my dear boy, why don't you stay for dinner? Adama makes the most delicious peanut soup. Before Kofi could answer, Adama's stomach chose that moment to let out a loud growl. You see, even her stomach approves. Dinner was a strained affair. Kofi seemed determined to fill every silence with tales of his goats. Adama parried his every attempt at conversation with a sarcastic remark or a pointed question. Her mother laughed at Kofi's jokes, praised his stories, and kept piling his plate with food. Adama watched in dismay as Kofi, fueled by fufu and her mother's encouragement, grew bolder. Days turned into weeks. Kofi, much to Adama's annoyance, became a permanent fixture in her life. He'd appear at her shop, bearing gifts of fresh goat cheese and awkward compliments. One evening, as they were walking back from the market, a group of rowdy men blocked their path. Adama felt a flicker of fear, but before she could react, Kofi stepped in front of her. He stood tall, his voice surprisingly firm as he warned them off. The men, surprised by his unexpected defiance, backed down. He wasn't the weak, awkward man she'd initially pegged him for. He was brave, protective, and surprisingly strong. As they continued their walk, Kofi resumed his chatter about his goats, but this time Adama found herself listening. That night, as she lay on her mat, she couldn't shake off the image of Kofi standing protectively in front of her. He might drive her crazy with his goat stories, but beneath it all, he was a good man, kind, gentle, and surprisingly courageous. And she had to admit his constant presence was starting to feel nice. The next morning when Kofi appeared at her shop, a hopeful expression on his face, Adama did something that surprised both of them. She smiled. Maybe, just maybe, her mother had been right all along. S1.